Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar RMIT student panel discussion on studying while working. So, before we get started, and I know we've got some interesting topics to cover off today, but I'd first like to acknowledge that this webinar is being delivered to you on the traditional and unceded lands of the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations. Our presenters and the wider RMIT University community respectfully acknowledges their ancestors and elders, past, present and emerging, and we also respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians and ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia and overseas where we connect, share stories and support each other. So some of you might already be familiar with the Teams Live platform or our regulars at the Shape Your Career webinar series. But for those that aren't, make sure that you enter your name so that we can keep track of your Q&As, and also after the session we'll be able to follow up if we don't get a chance to get to your question. But we have set aside some time at the end to get through all of your questions. So feel free to type away in the chat box, and our moderator will get to those at the end. Also, we love hearing your feedback on these sessions, so please take a moment to fill in the form that will be sent to you after today's session. So to get you excited, here's a quick rundown about what's to come for the next 55-ish minutes or so. My name is Jane, and I am the Manager of Global Recruitment Development at RMIT University, and I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes or so going over some interesting stats, tips and tricks and considerations to get you thinking about the possibilities of studying and fitting in all the other commitments life tends to throw our way. Then we'll be moving on to our panel discussion, where we'll hear firsthand from our students that will share their experiences and how they have actually managed to find that perfect balance between work, life and study. So first up, what is it about finding your way to study? So I'd first like to set the scene and tell you a little bit about the RMIT demographic. So actually, we have almost 70% of our students studying full-time, about 25% studying part-time, and 5% on distance or online learning. Now, that's a bit different to what the current situation is, where pretty much everybody is currently studying online, but that'll obviously transition as soon as the situation returns to normal and we can head up back to campus. But I also wanted to point out that about 30% of us are actually what's considered that non-school leaver. So those mature age students that are perhaps looking to return to study, to upskill or to branch out, or to maybe even head into a new career. So it's not just all about those young school leavers that make up the RMIT student population. In fact, about 55% of undergraduate students are have studied somewhere else, or have previously studied at RMIT, or have not previously studied at all. So a good proportion of our student population are coming in with significant life experience. So when thinking about returning to study, we actually conducted a bit of a survey a few months ago to some of our non-school leaving students about what are the sorts of motivations they had to return to study, and also what are some of those blockers, what are some of their main concerns about going back to study. You'll actually see that about 47% of our non-school leavers thought that returning to study will give them better job opportunities. But at the same time, about half also thought that actually studying while working was a big issue. So while they wanted better job opportunities, having to work while studying was a big concern. So this is a recent graduate outcome survey. I don't know if many of you are familiar with the quality indicators for learning and teaching. These guys do a whole bunch of research that helps universities like us learn a little bit about where we are in the education landscape in Australia, but also gives you some great stats on what your graduate outcomes are. Now, these are some figures that are in the recent survey. So you'll see that these are pretty high stats. So 72% of undergraduates are now in full-time employment. About 86% are employed overall. We have even higher figures for those in postgraduate work. But a couple of really interesting things is that almost 70% of undergraduates are working in managerial or professional occupations, and about 72% of undergraduates employed said that they were working in a job that fully utilised their skills and education. So what picture am I trying to paint for you now? Now, really, we do know, and you probably also know, the value of education, returning to study to do things like upskill or branch out or gain a particular qualification that leads to a profession of your dreams. We know the value of education to keep growing and learning. These are your long-term goals. You know, that career progression, the earning potential, but what does it mean in the short term for you? You know, study is not the only thing that you can do, and you can't just put your life on hold. So we've actually gone out, asked some of our experts to come up with top 7 tips to start thinking about what your return to study might be. And there's obviously considerations that you need to make, but if you start thinking about some of these things, you might find that returning to study is going to be a little bit more easier than what you'd originally thought. So number 1 top tip was make sure you get support for those around you. Tell them that you're thinking about going back to study. Talk to your manager, because you might find that being really open about your desires to return to study may open up a few more allowances, or considerations. There might be flexible work arrangements that might be put in place. The other thing is plan your time. You might even look to do some time management courses. So getting an idea about realistically what your days or what your week will be, to set aside time to study or to work. Having a good plan is a way of dealing with that. So also looking after your mental health, getting out of the house, making sure that there is time set aside that you can, reset, get back into it. Also be realistic with your expectations. Understand what is and what isn't doable within a particular time frame, and it's important that you always keep talking about it. Talk to your teachers, your lecturers, talk to your support network, because it might find that taking time out to readjust and reset will help get you back on track. Also look at the ways about how you learn and how that suits your lifestyle. You might be the kind of person that is a really visual learner. You might need time on campus, dedicated contact time with lecturers or your peers to be able to get through your work. Others might find that they are able to self-pace and manage manage their studies without the need to have constant check-ins. Also, don't sacrifice too much for your study. We need to be able to fit everything in, so don't overload yourself, don't overcomplicate things, because if you start to feel rushed, you're less likely to be able to complete. But the biggest tip of all is to make sure that you keep your end goal in mind. What does it mean to return to study? What is it that you want to get out of that? And keep that front of mind to keep you on track and to keep you motivated. A couple of other things to consider when returning to study is the level of qualification you're looking to do. Is it vocational training? Is it a bachelor's degree? Are you looking to do a master's? Make sure that the level or the career that you're entering to university is fit for purpose. You might find that an entire undergraduate degree is not necessary depending on what it is that you'd like to achieve. Also look at the particular pathways. With a lot of life experience, you may have actually started studies before or have incomplete studies. So getting in and looking at what you might be able to get credit for, whether it's partially completed studies, is something to consider. Another thing is it full-time or part-time study? You know, what's your contact time versus your independent study load going to be? Now, some international students here might need to study full-time, but if you're not here on a student visa, you might look to part-time study, and what does that mean to fit things in? Also, we provide recognition for prior learning for work experience as well as life experience. So you might find that going into postgraduate study without an undergraduate degree is something that is available to you depending on what your background is. And also how you would apply to university. So getting some idea on the logistics of applying, whether or not that's via VTAC or whether or not you're applying direct to RMIT. Now, we do have a wealth of information on our website, and we can also follow up with you about these sorts of things, as well as offer a number of other webinars. So there are lots of different ways to enter university. It's not just one size fits all, and there's often more than one way to get into a degree. So even if you don't think that you've got the entry requirements, or you may not have studied high school, it might have been such a long time ago, there's more ways to get into university. So studying a vocational program or an associate degree are often skills-based or profession-specific and tailored towards that job skills market. Pathway programs are really broad-based, so that gives you an opportunity to explore different specialisations, to become qualified in areas and focus on what matters, or to provide that smooth transition to higher education. We have some really great tools that will help you with setting up that pathway, and you can jump online and search for those pathway tools. So we've really got some students that have benefited from these transitions. So to get those skills that they need for jobs. Now I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides what those support services and what those skills are. So of course it's going to be a big commitment returning to study, but the best thing is to know that you're not having to do this alone. There is incredible support that the university provides our students, not just online tools that help with study techniques or discussion boards, but also being able to engage with teachers, being able to connect with your peers is also a big part of your learning experience. So we do have platforms that you can engage. We've got support services there for you. And if you have time, you can jump onto our website to see all of these resources that are available. But we also run webinars that go specifically into our student support services. But I also wanted to touch on the fact that all of our courses, all of our programs are geared towards providing you with the skills that employers are looking for. So we embed into our curriculum things like problem solving and teamwork so that you're building on all of those skills that our employers are wanting. We also, alongside your studies, provide lots of additional programs and services to help get you employment ready or job ready. Now, these are things like work integrated learning to get you working on the types of problems that you maybe face when you go out into the workforce, to do practical placements. So if it's a hands-on skill that you're required in a particular profession, we make sure that you get experience with that as part of your studies. We offer professional practice. We make sure that we're connecting with our industry partners to get mentoring, all sorts of different things to help prepare you with your career ahead. Touching on industry connections, we also offer a range of services to help make those connections easier. We've got the RMIT on-demand platform, which connects our current students with employers looking for short-term or part-time work. We've got the Career Hub, which lists both job opportunities as well as internships and placements, both for on-campus and off-campus. We've got our fabulous staff at the job shop that can provide practical skills training and support for applying for jobs, and also running a series of workshops geared towards your employability. We've got the RMIT Future Edge suite of programs if you want to dive deeper into particular kinds of skills training. And of course, and unique to RMIT, is the RMIT Cred platform and credentialing program. So you can actually, while you study, spend time building up your resume, building up your employability skills to really hit the ground running as you enter into the workforce. So rounding up, and not to take too much time away from the panel, is really, before you ask yourself how to make it all happen, consider the following. Make sure that you keep your end goal in mind, that balancing work, life, and study may not be as hard as you think, and that really we're all here to help make the most of your studies. But most importantly, you're not alone, and that leads me into our panel discussion. So we've got some wonderful students on the line waiting to tell you about their experiences. And at this point, I'll pass over onto our fantastic moderator, Jasmine, who will introduce our students to you.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us this evening. And thanks, Jane, for walking everybody through the tips. And I can see definitely from our chat group here that they've been very engaged, and they'd love to hear from our panel. So without any further delay, I'd like to introduce Zian. So Zian is a high-achieving student doing her final units in the Master of Cybersecurity at RMIT. Before applying for this course, Zian worked as a software developer. Her driver for doing the master's degree was to deepen her knowledge in securing coding and website development, as well as the best exposure to develop her expertise in cyber attacks. While studying, Zian successfully secured an internship opportunity during her coursework at Orica as a cybersecurity analyst. Her vision is where she wants to be in 5 years, is working as a penetration tester, risk manager, exploring digital forensics further, teaming up with the police for cyber investigation. So thanks for joining us, Zian. I've got the first question for you. So you've been working as a software developer and you wanted to upskill and explore further knowledge about cyber attacks. Can you share your findings and experience about studying a higher degree in the field that you have been working on? What could be the benefits from doing that?
Hi, Jasmine. So thanks for the question. So then I'll say that cybersecurity is a vast field, and I honestly did not know at the start where am I supposed to start. I did not have like a starting point. So for example, like acquiring a job as a penetration tester can limit you to only the technical side of cybersecurity. So whereas like there are also other non-technical fields in cybersecurity itself, like risk management. So then I did research on my own, and then I realized that the course structure at RMIT covered both the offensive and the defensive side of cybersecurity. So then it also builds a strong foundation as you get to learn cryptographic techniques, risk management, ethical hacking, so on and so forth. And also you realize the importance of IT security and how ethical hacking can help secure the IT infrastructure. Also, you get a chance of working with an industry partner, which is in one of the units where you are exposed to real life challenges and business requirements. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. And another question I have is, can you share some top tips of how you secured your internship during your studies as a to our prospective students?
Yep. So firstly, you need to be quite active in looking out for opportunities, maybe via LinkedIn, the RMIT job opportunities, volunteer at different events, etc. In short, like make yourself noticeable and try to stand out from the others. Update your resume, get it checked by the RMIT job shop representatives. They give great constructive feedbacks. Cater your resume and cover letter as per the job requirements. Like you shouldn't be having one resume for every job you apply. Also, the cover letter is the place where you can show your employer that you know a lot about the company. You are keen to work with them, and are also willing to showcase your skills for the business upbringing. Also, even if your grades are not very high, but you have sound technical knowledge and are open to new learnings, I don't think it's that hard to secure an internship.
Wonderful, thank you for that. I might just get your weekly schedule up on the screen. I know that there's been some questions from the audience that really wanted to understand how you managed working and studying at the same time. So we might just pull this up. Now, do you mind talking to the audience around how you've been able to manage working and studying as well as your internship at the same time, and what a typical week would look like for you?
Okay, so I'm in my final semester, and the units are quite demanding. So in a week, I spend around 26.5 hours in online studying. So I adjusted the timetable in such a way that I attend classes on Mondays and Thursdays, kept Wednesdays and Fridays purely for internship. And Tuesday, Saturday, and Sunday, I kept for to work on my assignments, study, conduct group meetings, and some family time. Also in the evenings, I work out, and Wednesday is a time just set for grocery shopping. Yeah, so it's quite a hectic schedule, but then it's manageable. Also in the weekends, I work from 6 to 9, and that's how I just manage the finances.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. I know we had some questions around finances, so it's good to see how you've been able to fit in some work as well. Thank you. I would like to introduce our next panel member, just so we can have some time at the end for more questions. But I'd love to introduce everybody, Robert, to everyone. Robert graduated from the Bachelor of Accounting, majoring in Forensic Accounting in 2018. He worked full-time with PwC and Ross Cosmetic when he studied his bachelor. Working in corporate, in the corporate world, made him recognise that he really wanted to work with more tangible things and pursue something that got him on his feet and out. So in 2020, Robert decided to return to study and applied for a graduate diploma of project management, as he wished to pursue project management in post-disaster relief. So Robert's vision in 5 years is to be working as a project manager in one of the government parks roles, married and living in the WA, have completed the Master of Project Management, traveling and seeing the world on holidays once or twice a year, and to have a dog. So, Robert, without further ado, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
And I guess for the first question, what dog would you get?
It's a very good question. Look, I had some as a child in South Africa, and then ever since we moved here, we never had any. But I'd love to have a Weimaraner. So
Okay.
they come from Germany originally. They're kind of a bit of a big dog, but I love them to bits. We had 2 of them as a child, so
Wonderful. We're going to, I bet you all the audience now is looking up which dog you
I
want.
reckon.
Um,
Yep.
Thank you for joining us. So you studied the Bachelor of Accounting, you majored in Forensic Accounting, and you worked for corporate firms like PwC and Ross Cosmetic. So why did you make the transition to project management? And what was a key driver for your decision?
So at PwC, I worked mostly, so because I studied forensic accounting, I actually ended up working in their tax evasion and fraud division for a while. And then as part of one of the training things that we had to do, we actually had to move into one of their assurance and auditing roles for a period of time. So I was there for about 6 months. And during that time, it was a great experience. I got to go out to clients and such, but that made me realize how much I enjoyed going out to sites, to clients, and actually sort of communicating with them a lot more. In the forensic world, we don't actually get to connect with our clients as much. We don't get to, and it's for some people, I mean, it's a very nice job if you want the consistency, but I needed a bit of change, which is something I needed. As well as I wanted that tangible side of it, where your results aren't sort of numbers and such, but actually projects, things going up or things being changed. And I actually had the opportunity back in auditing. A bunch of my clients actually were construction companies, and I got to speak with some of the project managers that were actually on there, and I sort of had to liaise with them a little bit, got to talk with them a bit. And during that time, I actually realized that it was something that I really was really curious on and really keen on. They told me all about their lifestyle and the things that they do, how they get to go out and see their projects that they're working on, how they're managing multiple projects, because it suited what we do very well, because we don't just work on one client at a time. We actually jumping between a lot of clients. And so it was something that I was already very familiar with and how to manage. And I just really, the part that you get to see a tangible thing coming out was actually really, really cool. And I wanted to have something like that. So for some people, the office life is definitely something that they enjoy. But for me, I wanted a bit of outside of office life, which is nice of the auditing side while I was there, but it was only for a period of time. Then I had to go back to where I was working, like in forensics. So yeah, that was my biggest reason for changing, was that I wanted to make that transition to get some tangible outcomes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. A few of the questions that we've had, and I guess a question we have for you is, you know, that change in your career is a big decision.
Oh, yeah.
And there are many considerations. So cost, time, your job, qualifications. So how did it happen for you? And I guess what advice would you give to people who are looking to change their careers or, you know, make a commitment to postgraduate studies?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so as everyone on this panel can imagine, and everyone that's attending can actually think, it was a very stressful time actually when it happened. I mean, it was quite a big moment because you're going from full-time study, you're in a career that's progressing, and you want to go back and study. Can be a bit daunting. When I started having the ideas a while back, and it was quite the thing to actually start thinking about it, because it's scary. I will admit it is quite scary, because you've got to weigh up, like everyone's asked, the cost aspects of it, especially, as well as your career development. And I always had that sort of idea in the back of my mind where if I was to do this now, I would actually, I'd start falling behind my peers or other people. But I can easily say that that's definitely not the case. How I went about it was, I initially actually started speaking to family members, because you need your family member support throughout it as well. You need a big support system when it comes to it, because it's a very big change. And once I'd sort of consulted with them and such, I actually, where I worked before I actually did it, I actually was still working at PwC, and we have a mentor system where every person has got a coach and a mentor that they go to. And so I remember having a meeting with my mentor and sitting down and kind of beating around the bush as to how I was going to actually say it. And eventually he kind of picked up on it, and he says, "Do you want to go and do further study?" I'm like, "Yes, I do." And he was very cool about it. Actually, it's the one thing that I will admit I found fantastic, was that the whole company was actually, everyone I spoke to was very, very supportive of it, because everyone is in the belief that when you go and study, you're actually going to go and better yourself and do further things. You can go and do more things. And so one of the things I know people are scared of is approaching their current employer, but I can, from my own personal experience, I can say that they've never had a problem with it. They were very open to the idea. The difficulty came when your role that you have, can it actually go part-time? Because so some people are able to go with full-time work with part-time study, whereas I went the other way. I went full-time study with part-time work. And so you've got to have a look at the role that you have and if it can actually go part-time, because I guess we in that circumstance have also got to be reasonable, and I had to be reasonable in my role. I couldn't go part-time because I needed the client collaboration, and you need to be able to develop yourself on each of the clients with this knowledge that you acquire. And so for me, I had to weigh up that option. I decided that I didn't want to go and do the study later, or maybe not ever get to it and actually regret that in the future. And I was in a position where I was able to move back in home with my family and stay there for a bit while I study, which is fortunate. I mean, and that definitely helped me a lot. I know that, I'm moving out actually in a month's time again. And so in terms of finances, I managed to have a part-time role for a bit. So when I left, I actually left PwC last year it was October, and I worked at Ross Cosmetics from end of October all the way through to about March, April-ish, when this whole COVID situation hit, and we started working remotely. But now obviously we understand what everything's going on, but it is quite a difficult thing. I would say it was worth the risk. I've really enjoyed my time, and it's been stressful at times, but I think you've just got to have the backup on backup from your family. So that's all I can say, is just have support system mostly.
That's wonderful. Thank you for the tips, Robert, and sharing your experiences. One of the questions that we'd love to ask you is like what we did with Zian, is talk a little bit about your schedule, a typical week for yourself. So we're just displaying on the screen at the moment for the audience your schedule.
Yep.
Just sorry. There we are.
Yep. That's my one.
So we just would like to share with the audience, if you can, how you manage work and study. And I think there's a question around, if you were working full-time and then studying part-time, which I know you alluded to before, of having been some of your experience. So if you could just walk us through your timetable.
Yeah, sure. So you can see it can be quite packed at times. I think for me, the biggest thing you have to do is you really have to create that schedule and be quite strict on your schedule. One of the things that I had on my phone actually was I had alarms set 15 minutes before my next thing that had to happen, except for classes, because often with classes I had to commute into the city. But now I don't, because obviously online. But for me, I prioritize doing everything towards the start of the week and try to keep my weekends, anything after lunchtime, I try to keep for family and friends, because I found it's very, very important to make sure that you actually do your own things. You need to get out of the house. You need to see your family, see your friends. It's a very, very important, because otherwise you will burn yourself out. In terms of class, so I managed to get most of my classes, well, one on Monday night and one Tuesday during the day. And then I worked part-time for Wednesday and Friday. As you can see, I worked full days on those days. I guess in terms of trying to manage it, like I said, just you have to have your stuff prepared and on your phone, or whatever works for you. I mean, everyone's a bit different. I know that worked very well for me. I have quite a strict routine where I'm fortunate. I am actually a morning person. So even during this lockdown, I managed to get up around 7:30 every morning. And so I managed to cram some of my stuff in. So I do a Bible study every morning, and then just have breakfast and get ready. And then you've got to, you got to be dedicated. I think my biggest tip is when you actually sit down to do your study, you need to make sure that you're sitting down and doing your study. You're not going between other things or kind of fading off. I think that's a time when you really should prioritize, because then if you can absolutely just smash through it, then you'll be good for the rest of your stuff. And I think, as you can see, I've got date nights planned in there as well. If you have a significant other, I can very much advise that you plan in something. They would very much appreciate that. But yeah, just be on top of it. And like I said, I think my biggest tip is definitely I am a big believer on smartphones. They help you a lot. So
wonderful, thank you. Yes, and I too second the timer on your phone. Having done postgrad, so I completely understand. So thank you for sharing. We will probably come back to you at the end with some more questions from the audience, but we might go to our next panel member. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Sotria, and Sotria has been doing the MBA degree the executive MBA at RMIT. Her background is in marketing, and she was actually meant to be in Tokyo for the Olympic Games this year. So thanks COVID, but we are glad that you're here with us. So Sotria applied for the EMBA for self-development and to advance her career. She manages study, work, life, and is also a single mum of a 7-year-old boy. So you are a star, a definite star, and we know that you've been able to manage, your work-life balance and enjoyed the flexibility, where some semesters you'd study full-time and some you were studying part-time. So we would love to hear about that tonight. And we hear you also love skiing and water skiing. So thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So tonight, what we would love to hear from you is you're the only guest that has a child here today, and we can only imagine that being a parent comes with a whole range of dependencies for you. So if you can share with us how your timetable looks in a week, what are the challenges to balancing study and work?
So a lot of drop-offs and a lot of pickups during the day, because we have like schools, sports, weekend activities, friends, and all of that, and they take over your life. And he's 7, so that's grade 1. So basically, they have a lot of activities on their own. It is a bit hectic in the mornings when we have like to rush to go to school, do the drop-off, then I have to go to work, then come back and all of that. But it actually works okay. Like most parents are multitasking, so you have to multitask in order to get things done. And aftercare, that's a big part of our life. So we have school and aftercare, which you can't really see in the schedule, But like for me, it's like he goes to school in the mornings, and then 3:30, 3 days a week when I work, he needs to go to the aftercare, and then I need to go to work or study. Sometimes we have classes as well at the university.
Fantastic, thank you. And I can see it's a very detailed schedule, so I can imagine that you work through your timelines. I'm hoping, you know, maybe Robert's tip around using an iPhone to help remember would also help, because I can imagine it could be quite busy.
Yeah, iPhone is just a big part of our lives now, not just the iPhone, but also the iPad, because like you have to take advantage of like all the time you have, because your biggest struggle is time. So you have to make time for everything else, and you need like to fit in study, group presentations, the meetings, the class at the uni, all of that. Like it's you need to plan all of that. So I think you need to have a good iPhone. Yeah, that's definitely.
Wonderful. And can we ask a little bit around what was your motivation for you to study the EMBA? And I guess what would you do after, and what were you planning to do afterwards?
So first I joined RMIT in 2006 just to do like a certificate for, which is like a VEE studies, and I fell in love with the university, and I loved the campus and the resources and the library and all of that. And then I wanted to go back and do something else, and I was thinking of a master's degree, and then I ended up like being admitted at the executive MBA program, which is a great program. And I started looking at that because it's focused on design thinking, and that's like a way of like doing things a bit different work, and I was very interested in that. So that's how I started reading about it, and that's how I wanted like to do this course. Now, talking about the MBA, because the executive MBA is for people that actually do work, there is a lot of flexibility. So you can study online, you can study full-time, you can study part-time. Gives you great flexibility around the program, so it makes it more appealing. Even before you get admitted to the course, it makes it appealing to your eyes, like this is a course I can manage, because like I can manage my time around that. And for me it worked really nice, although like yeah, now with COVID, like I study full-time, but it worked really nice last year as well when I was studying part-time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. One of the questions that we had, just while we have you, a participant or an audience member would love to know, with the EMBA, the understanding is you're assigned a personal tutor whom you meet frequently and you discuss your plans and goals with. What's your learning experience with this way of teaching and learning?
So you do have a mentor, which is great, because like you really have someone who can help you throughout the course of the study, and someone who can help you like to balance work life and studies, or like to help you choose courses. So you do have someone, and that's one of, I don't know, for me, I think having a mentor, I have a mentor at work, and it was always a big thing for me, but having a mentor for my studies is also great, because it takes a bit of the pressure a bit off you, and then like you get like someone else's opinion, someone who's an academic and knows how to like to give you good advice on what you should do and what you shouldn't do, and yeah, it gives you choices. And yeah, no, I love the mentor part of the program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I believe we'll come back to you at the end for some more questions from the audience. But we just want to introduce our last panel member for the evening. So we will introduce Sharan. We'll get you up on the screen. Oh, there you are. Hi, Sharan. So you're in your final semester of your Masters of Commerce. How exciting. And you're majoring in marketing at RMIT. So Sharan works part-time as a people and brand consultant at Campus Consultancy. You're very passionate about working on your personal brand on Instagram and LinkedIn. Out of work and study time, Sharon manages to do workouts, learn to sing, play video games, and also networking with peers and people in the industry. You prioritize mental health, which you believes is what will bring you success in everything you do. So that's perfect, because I couldn't agree more. So we're really lucky to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for the amazing introduction as well. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So do you mind telling us a little bit more about your personal brand that you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So I advocate for three main things: mental health, women empowerment, and sustainability. And I've been advocating for those things for quite a few years now. On LinkedIn, I talk more about presenting and working on your self-brand, whatever you find is interesting, how we can bring that out on a social platform. Because according to statistics, 70% of jobs aren't advertised. So everyone's like competing for 30% of jobs. So the best way of like getting your brand out there is through platforms like, for example, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of the best platforms. So like I push out a message on Instagram when it comes to mental health, sustainability, and women empowerment. And a lot of my work surrounds working for Red Cross, the United Nations. It's led me to do a TEDx talk as well, which is one of my biggest achievements ever. But yeah, just trying to spread a bit of kindness on any platform that I get on.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. So one of the questions I have for you is, how do you find what you learn in your degree could help you with your personal project and work that you're doing?
I think like what I've found is, so I studied in Sri Lanka, my undergrad in Sri Lanka, and then Australia has genuinely changed my life. The past 2 years have genuinely changed my life, and RMIT has been a big part of that. I think what I do is every single subject that I go through, I try and apply it to how I would use it, yes, from a work perspective, but also from a personal branding perspective as well. Because I'm a firm believer that you can't use every theory or every practical teaching taught within university for your life or for your projects. So I try to apply as best as possible to what could work, and try it out and see how it works in the industry. I've been lucky to have a lot of lecturers within RMIT who are very industry focused, because that's why I chose RMIT when I did my research, because I got into 4 universities and I chose RMIT because they're very industry focused, and the lecturers prove that as well. So I would say, like, whenever you go for a lecture, really think about how you can apply certain things that are taught. And you never know, because sometimes I've found that when I'm working on a certain project, things that I never thought would come into play when I learned it in university suddenly come into play. So really think about it from a holistic approach.
That's really good advice, and I'm glad to hear about our RMIT industry connections, because we're really proud of them. So it's great to hear them come out through your studies. The next question I wanted to ask was, with your timetable, and I know we've put it up on the screen now, but I really would love for you to do the same as our other our panel members this evening, and talk about your weekly schedule for working, studying, and even your personal brand project.
Yeah. So the thing is, you look at this and you think, oh my God, everyone here is so strict according to their timetable. Trust me, sometimes you can't fit to these buckets, and I'm just saying nobody's perfect. Even though this is up here and it's on my Google Calendar, like COVID-19 has really taken a toll on my mental health. So I've had to really be flexible with how I manage my time and manage my own health. So I would say, like, if you can't stick to a Google Calendar, just make sure that you at least do the bare minimum so you can get through, because for me, less productivity is better than no productivity, especially when you're stuck in an isolated setting. Obviously, we're getting out of it now. But yeah, I would say working out for me is a big important. It balances out my mental health. It releases endorphins. It's a whole thing, but it really helps balance that out as well. And I make sure to try and attend all the classes, because I'm more of an audible learner. I don't like to read as much. So I try to attend the classes, or at least listen to the recordings. Thankfully, RMIT lecturers record all of the voiceovers on slides, so I listen to the recordings. And then I do my work, such as assignments or work at campus consultancy. And yeah, just try to make sure I get at least 2 to 3 meals in every day.
Thank you. And it's good to see in here that you're balancing, your personal time. I can see you've got Xbox in there, which we love to see. So, and I wanted to just ask you around, you mentioned the impacts that COVID has had to you personally and your studies. So how has that made any impact with you on your Instagram personal brand project?
Yeah, so I've used RMIT's counseling services since 2018. So this is a very genuine, shameless plug, because RMIT's counseling service is part of the reason why my mental health has come to the point that it has, to a point that I've really been able to manage it and look after myself. So anyone who's within RMIT, use the services that are there. I've used industry mentoring as well, and I have an amazing mentor at PwC. Who's the head of content at Sydney, and I actually met her when I went to Sydney. So please use RMIT services; they're incredible. But when it comes to how COVID-19 affected me, I had to balance it out. So, for example, there were times where I had to, when I advocate for a lot for mental health. So I focus a lot more of my creativity and my content planning and my personal branding onto Instagram, because that's my platform. And I reduce the amount of time that I spent on LinkedIn or Xbox or all of the other things. So it's about managing where certain things make you the happiest, because when you're isolated and when you're away from friends and family, it makes it a bit more difficult. So just make sure that you're managing your energy levels. Manage your energy levels towards something that makes you happy, so that you can continue on your day and you can balance out getting through university and getting through work as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does perfectly. Thank you so much. And we can see some comments come through that everyone's a very big fan of yours. So before we get you off the screen, what's your Instagram?
Oh no,
your personal brand.
I don't want to plug it. Okay, it's my full name. It's Sharon _, and then VELAUTHAN.
See, might get some followers out tonight. See, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I might ask you the first question from the audience. One of the questions we've got in here, I think we've covered a lot of them, but there's a question around how does studying online work for group assignments?
Oh yeah, so make sure you have a good group with you. That's the most important thing, because sometimes I'll personally say that sometimes I'll struggle to such an extent where my group members have really followed up with me and pushed me in terms of when on the days that I would be not at my best. And that is very important, to have group members who would push you to do certain things and also check up on you. So I would say really focus on having that all-rounder team, because I've had group members where I would have to do almost 70 to 80% of the work, and you just do it because you just don't want to go through the process of raising concerns. But I've come to the point where I know how to select my group members. I really suss out what would be the best chemistry within a group. So I had really good group members this time. Some of my subjects were converted from group to individual, but the ones that I did have groups, they were also struggling with their own mental health, and we were very open to discussing and being okay if a group member doesn't come for a meeting, but also make sure that that person pulls in the weight. So that understanding has to be there. If you are in a group, especially in an online setting where someone's not pulling their weight, it is okay to raise concern, because these are your grades on the line. This is your future on the line. So it's always good to raise concern.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I've got a question here for Zian. So Zian, we have a question from Nishad, and he's asking, or they are asking, sorry. I'm planning of undertaking the Masters of Cybersecurity and working in IT full time. So what they would like to know is how you managed this degree with full-time, how someone could manage this degree with full-time work. I know you've previously talked about your internship, so I think we're just missing a little bit there of their question.
Okay, so Nishad, it's good that you're planning to go for cybersecurity, because that's quite a demanding field, and the resources are scarce in the field and they want more people. That's what is my experience, and that's what I've researched and got to know. So how did I manage? How did I get the internship? I had two internship offers. One I had got via LinkedIn, where I made connections and met people, went for technical conferences, and got to know people, and then spoke to them about the skills and the projects I have been doing. And then they were interested and wanted to take forward the project. The next offer, the internship at Orica, our professor had brought to our notice, and she had told us to submit our resume and cover letter, and then just catered the cover letter and the resume as per the job requirements. Yeah, so that's and then they liked it, and I got the offer. I got the internship. To answer your next part of the question, which says manage the degree with full-time work, I'd say you have to spend a lot of hours into attending classes, assignments, group works, and during this time, the COVID-19 time, we spend most of our hours online. Even the group assignments, we use collaborative platforms. We all the group assignments were done on Microsoft Teams, where we coordinated and did our tasks. But to answer that question, I'd say that if you're doing full-time work, you could take up just maximum 2 units, and you would be able to clear the subject. And we do 4 units per semester. So taking up full-time job and doing 4 units is quite hectic and stressful. Yeah, that's what I'll say.
Thank you for sharing with us. And I have a question for Soti. One of the questions that we've been asked is around someone who's a little concerned about how to manage, their bills and making study feasible for them. So do you mind sharing a little, some tips that maybe you have around the costs for studying and managing that with work and life?
Yeah, so the MBA has a significant cost, which is also different if you are an Australian student or if you are an international student. So I can't really say for an international student how this can work. But if you're an Australian student, there are a lot of options available. You can either pay by yourself, you can get a loan, or you can get HECS to pay for the studies. So how do you manage now the rest of the financials, like at home? You can do it. It's feasible. Like even if you take time off work, it's quite feasible to do it. And sorry, are we talking about the financial, about the
or even I guess maybe do you have any tips or tricks that for some of the attendees on being able to work and
MBA is all about business, right? You need to budget. Like you need to have a very you need to make a study calendar to manage your workload and your studies, like be as realistic as possible. Make a realistic study calendar and and budget the month. This is the only way it can work. But it's easy. It's not that difficult.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Could I just add to that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, so like absolutely what Sotiria said was completely fine. Like definitely have like an Excel sheet that you can like budget your finances, so you can manage those things as well, especially if you're working casual jobs. Also, as an international student, hustle. There is like apps like Foodie, like Unidays, Groupon, Scoopon that gives you like offers of like groceries and all of those things. Make use of it. Melbourne gives you so much of discounted food. Just make use of it so you can save a lot of your money, and you can save up and do trips.
Wonderful, thank you. And yes, we all know uni days. It's a good tip. And our very last question for Robert. Robert, we would love to ask you to finish our session this evening. What are your top tips for someone looking at studying, especially while working and managing personal relationships?
I think it's a very great question. I think top tip is definitely time management. I think you need to be on top of your time and where you're going to be allocating it. I think, as Sharon, I'm very much on board with him as well when he mentions about mental health. And I think if you don't have good mental health in times while you're studying, you're not going to have very great results all the time. And so I definitely think that's a great point there. So managing your relationships is very important during this time. And I think just everyone's very understanding. Just speak and communicate. Top tip number 2, definitely communicate. Communicate with your family, with your friends, your loved ones. Communication is a great thing, and you've got to make sure that you stay on top of that. And especially if you're struggling, RMIT has some great things in place for that. They've got a great medical center and such with psychologists and stuff all at hand as well if anyone needs to talk. But also just reach out to your peers. Everyone's very good at listening at RMIT, and I think just communicate with everyone and just make sure that everyone's on the same page. And top tip number 3 is just enjoy what you're doing. Pick what you actually want to do and just enjoy it. I think that's the biggest thing of all of them. So definitely, but I think have all your stuff prepared and just go for it, give it your best shot.
Thank you so much for that, Robert. And we really appreciate your advice. I will hand over to you, Jane.
Thanks again to our fabulous student panel members to share your experiences and your tips and tricks of juggling all of those important life bits and pieces while studying. I know you've probably got a bunch more questions to ask our panel members. Please keep shooting your questions through. We will try and get to those offline. But also check out our upcoming webinars by going on to rmit.edu.au/events. As you found this webinar, we've got some pretty awesome and interesting sessions in store for you. So don't forget to check out our website. And thanks again to our panel members and to Jasmine for doing a fabulous moderating. We hope you enjoyed the session. Until next time, take care and have a wonderful evening.